So as we practice the precepts, both the precepts on what to abandon and the precepts about what to undertake, if we do them with a bodhicitta aspiration, then we've hit the jackpot, because we have the merit from the pratimoksha precepts, learning them, keeping them, and we have it done by the bodhicitta, or with the bodhicitta motivation, which creates so much merit and directs our actions so that what we do really becomes beneficial. So yes, we can brush our teeth with bodhicitta, but I think when we study the pratimoksha and the Vinaya, the merit really increases because of the topic. So take a moment and generate bodhicitta. So the pratimoksha precepts, the precepts found in the Vinaya, are not a specific bodhisattva practice. They're also shared in common with practitioners of the fundamental vehicle, which means with the hearers and solitary realizers. So sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, the Tibetans or the Chinese have Mahayana pratimoksha or Mahayana precepts, and that's not actually correct. Yeah, we may keep them with a Mahayana motivation, but the precepts themselves are considered from the fundamental vehicle. So when we take them, the motivation has to be at least the aspiration to be free of samsara and to attain liberation. That's the motivation in common with the fundamental vehicle. On top of that, you have the option of adding the bodhicitta motivation, which is what we do. Okay, but it's important to be clear about this, because when you talk with people from other traditions, especially our Theravada friends, they'll often say, oh, the Mahayana pratimoksha. Oh, no, there's no Mahayana pratimoksha. Okay, it's pratimoksha for all the traditions. Okay, so right now there's 3 existing lineages of the precepts. So you have the Pali tradition. What is that's a lineage that's kept in Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and so on. And then you have the Dharmaguptaka lineage of precepts. Those are the ones that are kept in China, most of Vietnam, Taiwan. And then you have the Mula Sravastivada lineage of precepts, and that's the one that's held in the Tibetan and Mongolian communities. Okay, so the lineages of these precepts are different, because different people brought them to the countries and so on. And there's even more Vinayas, There's apparently 18 to match the 18 fundamental vehicle schools. If you want a list of those 18, look in the back of Meditation on Emptiness. It has many versions of it. So everybody agrees that there's 18, but what the 18 are, there's some variety in how they're categorized, which ones are subsets of which ones. The precepts are pretty much the same in the three extant Vinayas. You know, there's other lineages, but they are not living lineages now. So the the precepts are pretty much the same. Sometimes there's slight differences in them, in the wording, in some of the details. Sometimes one point might be one precept in one tradition, but to wind up being two precepts in another tradition. So there's those kind of differences. And, you know, when you think that all these lineages were passed down orally for centuries, it's amazing how similar they are. Yes, there are differences, and the numbers of precepts are different, but the basic, things are the same. It's really amazing when you think about it being, how Buddhism went in so many different directions, so many different lands, and was passed down orally for centuries. That still things are, how similar things remain. Okay, now each of these lineages, well, the people in the different countries have various attitudes towards their lineages. Most everybody's proud of their own lineage, not proud, arrogant, but they respect it. They're glad they follow it. Some, both the Theravadas and the Tibetans are, very much this. Theravada, we just have the Pali lineage. Tibetan, we have Mula Sravastivada. No mixing of Vinaya lineages. In China, historically there were many Vinaya lineages that went there, and the emperor, I think it was in the 8th century. I would have to check it, but quite early on. Said of all these different lineages that were present in China, that now everybody was going to follow the Dharmaguptaka. Yeah, and so that's the one that is followed in the Chinese speaking areas and in Vietnam. Yeah, but the thing is that yes, it's the Dharmagupta that's mainly followed, and the ordination that's given is from the Dharmaguptaka tradition. Yeah, but I just lost my train of thought. Oh, but yeah, because they had so many Vinayas translated into Chinese, when they have a question, they follow mostly the Dharmaguptaka, but when they have a question that isn't answered in the Dharmaguptaka scriptures, then they look in the Sravastivada or the Pali or, the Mahasamgika. They look at the scriptures in another tradition, that because sometimes the traditions, there's more explanations of different precepts or of different things that you're supposed to do. There's more explanation in one precept, in one Vinaya or the other. So they will, look in the other Vinayas. So they have like a very ecumenical idea, and way of practicing. Venerable Benyan was saying, if you go and you're staying in a monastery from a different Vinaya lineage, you do posada or sojung with them. You keep the precepts the way they keep them in that particular temple. Okay, and that's kind of wise wherever you go. You know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Yeah. So don't create controversy by saying, oh, well, I can do this and this. If anything, be more strict than the monastery that you're staying in. But don't be arrogant about being strict. When you meet people who are arrogant about how perfectly they keep the Vinaya, it really is off-putting. Yeah. So don't have that kind of arrogance. Okay. Now, in terms of levels of ordination, first of all, I should say that you may wonder, well, how come I'm not mentioning Japan? Buddhism is very prominent there. In the Meiji Restoration in the middle of the 19th century, the emperor said that all the Sangha had to disrobe. So it was, the government managing what goes on in the Sangha. And because, when you have Buddhist groups, that and the leaders, they can mobilize a lot of people, and they can, governments can feel very threatened by that. So they try and break the power of religion. And the way they did it in Japan was make the monastics disrobe. Okay. So with the Japanese, what we mostly meet is there are a few very small Vinaya lineages. We met a couple of nuns from Japan. Do you remember how many precepts they had? The 10 precepts. Okay, so that would be Shramaneri. Yeah, but normally what they have in Japan is priests. Yeah, so Japanese priests. When I've asked some of my Zen friends in America, are you? Because sometimes they'll call themselves monastics and they're place monastics, and sometimes they call themselves priests, and so once I asked somebody, do you consider yourself a monastic or a priest? And she said, we're trying to figure that out. Yeah, because, the monastics have a precept of celibacy, which is a very much a line between being lay and being monastic. Okay. In the Tibetan tradition, and this can be confusing, you have people who are part of lay lineages, yeah, but the clothes they wear look like monastic clothes. And if you don't know how monastic clothes are stitched and how they're folded, you could think those people are monastics, yeah. Or you can wonder why monastics have long hair. And we're wearing earrings. They're not monastics as part of, its lay lineages, often tantric lineages. Yeah. So His Holiness has commented several times, but just because he says things, it doesn't mean people follow. But he said it would be, much better if people from these lay lineages, because they may be very good practitioners and some of them are lineage holders, if they didn't wear robes that looked like monastics, or if they wore, a lower garment that was maroon, their upper garment should be something white with stripes in it. Yeah. Maroon stripes. So he encourages them to somehow dress differently, but many people don't listen, and so because that's been their habit for generations, And so it can be confusing. And so you just sometimes have to ask the Lama or the disciples, or look it up on the web and see if these particular monastics are lay, or if they're if these particular teachers are monastic or lay. Okay. Yeah, we got one person who applied for this program, and he called himself a lay monastic. There are not such things. Okay, they belong in the categories with rabbit's horns and turtles' mustaches. You know, there's no such thing as a lay monastic. You're either lay or you're monastic, okay? And the principal thing that is dividing them is the celibacy precept. But the celibacy precept isn't just, oh, you don't have sex. It's a whole, the ramifications of keeping celibacy is you don't have a family. Okay, so if you don't have a family, you don't have much of a social life. You don't need to go to work to earn a lot of money to pay for your kids' education, or for them to get Nike shoes, or whatever it is. Okay, so there's many ramifications of being celibate. It's not just, oh, you don't have sex, but you live a regular lay lifestyle. Okay, because if you think about it, most of the time in people's lives, they are not having sex. Yeah, 24 hours a day, you know? So, yeah. Okay, so the levels of ordination that are when we look at the pratimoksha precepts, at least in the Tibetan tradition, okay, there's different kinds. I think there's 8. So you have the male and female upasaka, upasika. These are people who have the 5 lay precepts. Yeah. Then you have the fully ordained bhikshu and bhikshuni who have the full set of precepts. And you have the shramanera, shramaneri, the novices, who are in between those two. Then, in between the novices, the shramanera, shramaneris, and the bhikshu, bhikshunis, okay, for the nuns only, the monks don't have it, there's another ordination called shikshamana, or the training ordination. And this is a 2-year period during women that begins when people take 6 precepts, additional precepts, and then they keep the bhikshuni precepts, but without studying them. So they just have a list of don't do this, but they don't have the full precepts, and they don't study the ordinations precepts of the bhikshunis. So it's an interesting kind of ordination. It's 2 years. Some people say, oh, it's in order to make sure that a woman who becomes a bhikshuni is not pregnant. Well, 2 years? Yeah, it's like, yeah, I think that's more what elephants have, or, the time they're pregnant. Yeah. Some people say, oh, it's because women are more emotional, and so, the usual thing people say about women, we're so emotional. Yeah, we're crying all the time. Yeah, and we can't get along with each other, and we're always fighting. But the men, yeah. So actually, along this line, I was talking, another woman and I were once talking with a geshe, and he was going on about how the men are, the men are strong, and the women are weak, and the men fight in wars and they defend their country, and the women run away. And this other woman and I looked at each other and said, actually, the women are very smart. They don't want to fight in wars. They think wars are ridiculous. Yeah, he didn't say much. But it's true, isn't it? Yeah. When you look, we do prison work. You compare the number of men and the number of women in prison. So many more times men. Yeah. So, anyway, we won't get into that, but just to let you know, that kind of gender discrimination exists in Buddhism, and we see it. It's mostly, my personal feeling is it's mostly cultural, yeah. And as we bring Buddhism to the West, that's got to change. I don't think Buddhism would really spread well in the West if, the women were sitting in back and the men sitting in front, and the women in the kitchen and the men eating and pontificating. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever been at a meal with men who are pontificating? Yeah. Or a board meeting? Yeah. You ever been at a board meeting yeah, anyway, we won't get into that. But the point is Buddhism spreads to different cultures. What happens historically is it adapts the external appearances, the external practices to fit with that culture and climate and economic system and so on. Yeah. And so coming to the West, I think you have to have that gender equality. Otherwise, people are not going to hang around. Okay, so and then the eighth of the pratimoksha ordinations is one that is the 1-day precepts. Okay, where you take 8 precepts, which are very similar to the 8 Mahayana precepts, slight details and what the precept difference in details and what the precepts are, but they're kept like all the pratimoksha with the minimum aspiration to attain liberation, whereas the 8 Mahayana precepts, also 1 day, they're taken with the bodhicitta motivation. Okay, so the 8 Mahayana precepts are not a pratimoksha ordination. And the bodhisattva precepts, the tantric precepts, these are not pratimoksha ordinations. Okay, are people clear about that? Now, somebody's going to say, well, in the Chinese tradition, you have tonsur. Where does that fit in? In the Tibetan, you have rabjung. Yeah. In the Theravada, you have maichi. Yeah. Where do those fit in? Oh, and in what's it called? The forest tradition in the West. Yeah, that that Ajahn Sumedho is kind of the head of. Then they have a Siladhara ordination. Where did all these other ordinations come from? No, I said Siladhara. Yeah. Sila means ethical conduct, Dara means holder. So because they, in the Theravada, they don't have the Bhikshuni precepts. And even in Thailand, the nuns wind up, they're called maichis, they usually wear white, and they have the 5 lay precepts, and they cook and clean in the monasteries. And they practice, and there's a few maichis who are very noted for their practice and who teach. And now in recent years, there's been bhikshunis in Thailand and in Sri Lanka. Yeah. In Burma, no bhikshunis. If you try and become a bhikshuni in Burma, they will throw you in prison. Seriously. In Thailand, they forbid it, but people are still giving it. Yeah, I think, because what was happening was they had enough nuns in Thailand to give it, and then they were having monks from Sri Lanka go to Thailand, because for the bhikshuni ordination you need both monks and nuns, and uh, and then the Thai government, because they, there too they have power over the Sangha. And in 1928, something like that, they made some kind of law that you cannot have bhikshuni ordination. So they didn't want these Sri Lankan monks coming to help and give it. But I don't know exactly what's happening now. It could be that there's some um, Thai monks who do it. In the Western Theravada community, then some of the Western monks will give it. Ajahn Brahm and his people will participate, but the ones following Ajahn Sumedho, they don't give it at all. So what they did, because the nuns really wanted more precepts than just the 5 lay precepts, they made this Siladhara ordination. They created it. So they took different precepts from that bhikshunis have and that bhikshus have, and created this ordination, which they then give to the women just in their own lineage. So it's not widespread. It's just, the Western Theravadas. Okay, but again, not all of them. So you might remember when our friends Achan Nisabu and Achan Covillo, yeah, when they came, they were saying that they had just come from ordination. And so they very much, advocate for gender equality. So there was an ordination of a bhikshuni in California, and they went there. They are tangentially associated with the Ajahn Chah tradition. Yeah, if they were actually part of it, they may have gotten kicked out by participating in the bhikshuni ordination. There's politics everywhere, you know. Okay, then the Rabjung is, when you take that, it's the 5 lay precepts and 3 special precepts. These extra, so they have 8 altogether. They are not the same as the 8 Anagarika precepts. The first 5, the 5 precepts are, okay, except the Rabjung, there the 3rd precept is celibacy. Yeah, so you have no killing, stealing, celibacy, no lying, and no intoxicants. And then they have 3 more precepts, which are to follow your teacher, to abandon the signs of laity, meaning wearing lay clothes and jewelry and those things, and to adopt the signs of monastics. Yeah, so that is found only in the Tibetan tradition. We haven't seen it in any of the other ones. The Tonsur, yeah, Tonsur, they take 5 precepts. What else and they cut their hair, and they can wear robes, just like the Rabjung can wear robes. Do they have any other precepts besides that? Just the 5. Okay, so in many monasteries, you would go for the, this is the same for the men and the women. At the beginning, you would go, you would do you would start out as just a lay person with 5 precepts, And then as you got used to things, you might get tonsured. So this is a big thing because it's you cut your hair, you know, and you put on robes. And then you live in the monastery and you do what all the Shramaneras do, okay, even though you don't have the 10 precepts that they have. Okay, what we do here, okay, is, people come as lay people, then they take the 5 precepts, yeah, and then when people are getting more interested in and wanting to take more precepts, then they take the anagarika, which is the 8 one-day precepts, but you take them for longer than one day. You can decide, we give them for a year, or longer. Somebody could say, I'll keep them until X and, such and such a date, something like that. Okay, so there the extra, the way we give anagarika is the 3rd precept is celibacy. And then the 3 extra ones you have are not to, let me think, not to sit on high beds and thrones, not to wear jewelry, perfumes, ornaments, these kinds of things. And not to, yeah, I said not. What? Not, that's, oh yeah, that is one of the 8. Okay, that's one of the 8. And then when you have so that's for the anagarika. So people would keep that a year, some people more, some people a little bit less. Then taking the novice, which is 10 precepts. It's 10 precepts in all the Vinayas, but somehow in the Tibetan tradition, they've divided it into 36 novice precepts. I've been trying to find out how that came about historically, because it's only the 36 divisions are only found in the Tibetan, but I haven't been able to find an answer.
Venerable, I thought that the precept for not engaging in entertainment was also a part of the 8 anagarika precepts.
Yeah, it is. Because, okay, the high beds and thrones and the ornaments, that's one. Okay, then the singing, dancing, playing music, entertainment is another. And then the not eating after midday. Yeah, those are the 3 extra ones for the anagarika. Okay, when you have the 10 Shramaneri precepts, yeah, there you add on not handling money, gold, silver, things like that. And the precept that was one precept in the 8, not sitting on high beds and thrones, and the ornaments, jewelries, perfumes, those are divided into 2 separate precepts in the 10. Okay. Yeah, so we have people keep anagarika more or less about a year, then they take the Shramaneri. At the time for the women, when they take that, they also take the shikshamana and begin the 2-year training. But we have the policy at the Abbey for both men and women that they remain in that novice for 2 years, because it's I think it's much better for people's minds to get used to being a monastic, starting with a few precepts. Already it's a big change in lifestyle and so on. And if you start giving people all the full precepts where they have hundreds, that can really be too much. So it's good to have people gradually progress in the number of precepts. that they take. Any questions about that? Yeah.
Which Vinaya do the Anagarika come from?
The
Anagarika precepts.
The Anagarika precepts. They're in. I think they're found in all of them. I know that. I mean, they're in the Theravada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're in the
Dharmaguptaka.
And the Mula Sravastivada. They're the one-day precepts, but you just take them for longer.
I see.
Yeah, and in the Dharmaguptaka, I'm not sure, because I think what they do is the tonsure usually.
And then you also said, but I think you misspoke, you said that the Theravada didn't have the Bhikshuni, but you meant that Thailand didn't have Bhikshuni ordination.
No,
right?
in general, the Theravada countries.
Oh, the Theravada countries.
Countries,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which means why, because the Theravada, I mean, it's like in the Tibetans, the Vinayas have it, but the lineage doesn't exist, so they don't have that ordination. That's a living tradition. What's happening now is they're trying to restore it. So in 1996, there were a few, very small group of Theravada women who were given the Bhikshuni ordination by some Koreans. That's not very well documented. But in 98, Master, I get all the names confused, the one from Fokwan Shan, Shin Yun. Dharma Drum is Shen Yun. Oh, it sounds the same to me. Okay. So, yeah. So he organized a full ordination ceremony in Bodh Gaya for bhikshunis, and there were nuns from the various traditions who came. As it happened, Venerable Lekshe Somo and I were both invited to be part of the nuns who gave the ordination. Yeah. So, and there were quite a number of people that were ordained at that time. And so the Theravada women from Sri Lanka who came when they went back to their own country, and there had been a few Sri Lankan monks who had participated in the ordination too. When they went back, these monks supported them, and so they started giving the dual ordination in Sri Lanka, and then from Sri Lanka it went to Thailand. I don't know about Cambodia. I know there's some Chinese bhikshunis who have the Dharmaguptaka lineage, I believe, and they went to live in Cambodia. But that's a different ballgame.
It's not that important, but the 8 Anagarika precepts, the one that is alone is like sitting on high seats and beds is one, and the one that's the two that are in the novice ordination that are together in the Anagarika are ornaments, perfumes, and then entertainment and all of that.
Yeah, those are all the second one.
I don't know if you've ever heard this addressed before, but it seems very strange to me that in the Thai forest tradition, there's the Siladhara ordination that they made up themselves.
Oh yeah, and they pride themselves on holding the Vinaya very purely and without any changes, and they made up an ordination.
And they won't accept the Bhikshuni. That's
they won't. Yeah, because the lineage has been broken. It's the same argument that Tibetans give.
But they can make up their own ordination. Okay.
Yeah, except it's not the Bhikshuni. They're lower than Bhikshuni. They don't have as many precepts as the Bhikshunis. They just have some of those in the ordination that they made up. Okay.
Have you ever heard? They've been posed like how do they have the authority to do that?
I don't ask those questions to people who keep those things. It becomes very rude. Yeah. I have friends in that community, you know. I mean, what are they going to say? Well, our teacher said it was okay and it resembles the Bhikshuni, so good enough. But we keep the precepts very strictly and exactly as they were given. You expect people to be consistent. Give up that expectation. Yeah, human beings are not consistent. They do so many things that we who have clear minds and are never foolish don't understand why these people do these crazy things. They should really be like us, shouldn't they? Yeah.
This may fall in the category of expecting consistency, but they have a Vinaya that spells out the Bhikshuni vows.
Well, yeah, so do the Tibetans then. Yeah.
So it can't be revived. So out of great compassion, the teacher created this possibility for the women to still keep the precepts well. You don't understand?
Adopted tradition-wide too. It's also kept right within that particular lineage.
Yes.
So it's not like they made something up that then became the version of women's ordination. They just really it was out of compassion.
Yeah, it's within their own group. Yeah.
When is the Rabjung given? In what circumstances?
It's often given to little kids. Yeah, when they first come to the monastery, because in the Tibetan tradition, they want the children to come to the monastery when they're very young, because they can start memorizing then, and that really gives them a really good head start. So I think they're the ones who usually get the Rabjung. And then when they're a little bit older, they get the Shramanera.
Like before they can scare the crow away?
No, I think they can do the Rabjung before they can scare the crow.
Yeah, before.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
What I saw at Chenrezig Institute was that the Geshe would sometimes give the Rabjung as a way of, like an Anagarika training, because there was no training for Westerners. So that was their
but they often didn't train the Shramaneres either.
Yes, it's done both ways.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they gave the men Rabjung as well. Yeah.
So from what I know about the Vinaya in Japan, and I was speaking to a Tendai monk online about this, is that basically that the pratimoksha vows are still giving sort of symbolically. You still receive pratimoksha vows when you have an ordination, but they're just not followed most of the time, but you can still optionally follow them.
I'm not an expert on the Tendai tradition. It's better you ask somebody that follows that tradition.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. At the ordination that we went to in Taiwan, there was one monk who practiced Tendai, and he was taking bhikshu. But I don't know that lineage in general, what the story is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Venerable, can different Vinaya doing Lojong or Posada together?
Oh, to do Posada together. There's different views on that, okay? And I think the different views go kind of according to the teacher in some way. In general, the Theravadas, no, they keep separate, and the Tibetans keep separate. Except when they invited Venerable Hengqing to the Bhikshu Posada as, that remarkable thing that happened and that hasn't happened since, at least not that I know of. The Chinese are much more, if you're in a Theravada, yes, you can, monastery, yes, you can do sojung with them, or if a Theravada monk comes, they can do it with you. So, yeah. I'd really like to get on to some other topics besides the minor details about this, unless people have something really burning. At where? Yeah. Oh, okay.
SK was invited by the monks to do
To
sojong
join the monks.
in the sojong.
Yeah, okay. That's unusual. In Dharamsala, never. Right? Never. Okay. So, the question sometimes comes, well, why take the full ordination? Yeah, I mean, you have hundreds of precepts that way, and you have many more things to do, because the precepts are not only what you are to abandon as a monastic, but there's precepts that you must keep as well. And this is why it's really important, I think, to live in a community, because some of the precepts that you must keep, you need to be in a community in order to keep them. So, for example, the sojung, the bi-monthly, every 2 weeks, on full and new moon days, the confession and restoration of precepts. In order to officially do it, you need 4 more fully ordained people. Yeah, if you don't live in a community, then you don't have even the 4 to be able to do that. You can do something on your own. You do the, like the prostrations, 35 Buddhas. You confess. In front of the altar, you read your precepts. So, that's how you would do it if you were alone, or if there's 2 or 3, you confess to each other. But you can't do, those of you who are familiar with the ceremony, the set of questions where you ask, is the Sangha assembled? Is it in harmony? You can only do those sections when there are 4 more fully ordained people. And it's when those are done, and then the Pratimoksha is read or recited out of memory out loud. That's what constitutes the full posada or sojung ceremony. Okay, if you're living on your own, you have to improvise, and do something. Okay, so yeah, why take the full ordination if you have so many more precepts? Yeah, well, first of all, like I said, it's much better to approach the whole thing gradually. Yeah, do the 8 precepts. Try being celibate for a year, and wearing a uniform and shaving your head, and changing the way you walk, changing the way you use your eyes, all these kinds of things, that you have to become quite aware of. And then keeping the novice and or the shikshamana, for the women, for 2 years. And you get used to things that way, and because it's a big transition. And also you're living in communities, so you have to adapt to all of that. You're going from home life to monastic life, and they're very different lifestyles. One of the, at the ordination in the spring, one of the Vinaya masters was saying that being ordained is making the familiar unfamiliar, and making the unfamiliar familiar. Okay, so what is familiar? Handling money, having your own car, living on your own, having a social life, meeting your family, having a job, managing everything yourself, going here and there when you feel like it. You know, that's what's familiar. And when you ordain, you have to make that unfamiliar. In other words, you stop practicing like that. You change your lifestyle, okay? So that those things are not what you habitually do anymore. And then what is unfamiliar, you make familiar. So what is unfamiliar? Keeping the precepts, following the schedule in the monastery, doing a regular meditation practice, morning and evening, doing the sojong, the posada, the varsa, all these kinds of things. That is making, as a layperson, you're unfamiliar with that, and you make that familiar. Yeah, I thought it was a very good way to describe it, so that people are very clear. It's a big change in lifestyle, yeah, which necessitates a big change in the mind, and when we enter the monastery, our minds are still functioning like lay people. And I want this, and I don't want that, and I like this, and I don't like that, and how come this person does this, and I can't do it, and how come I have to do that, and they don't have to do it, and I want to change the robes, I want to change the schedule, I want to change the precepts, I want to change the world, I want to change everything but my mind. Yeah. And, that philosophy doesn't go very far in a monastery, okay? You learn that no. I mean, what I often wind up saying to people is, did you come here to get your way, or did you come here to train your mind? Yeah. And that's what you have to ask yourself, Did I come here so I could get my way, or did I come here to train my mind? Yeah. So it's the thing of making the unfamiliar familiar, and what is familiar unfamiliar. Okay. So it takes time. So that's why I think it's good that people don't just jump into the full ordination right away. The men can do that. They can take the novice and full in one day. I don't think it really works well, at least not with the Westerners. Okay. Now, so why take the full ordination? Just so you can have more precepts? Yeah. Just so you can have the namjar? You want another robe to slip around? Yeah. But it has more patches, and it's a higher ordination, and I can stick my nose in the air. Yeah, so what? Yeah, big so what? Speaking personally, I could see a very big difference in my mind from when I was a layperson and when I was a shramaneri and when I became a bhikshuni. It really changed a lot for me, okay? And what it changed in particular is before my main concern was my Dharma practice. Yeah, I want to study, I want to meditate. Where can I go where I can study the best? Where can I go where I have enough time to meditate? Where can I go where I like the community? It was all about my Dharma practice. What gets really emphasized for you when you take the full ordination is it's not about your own Dharma practice. Yeah, but you are now responsible for continuing that Vinaya lineage and continuing the Buddha Dharma for future generations. So it becomes a big change, a big commitment. You know, you can't sit there and just think all the time, what's good for my Dharma practice? It's, you know, how do I benefit sentient beings? How do I preserve the Dharma and keep it going? Yeah. And you realize too that when you're fully ordained, that people are going to, you know, look more closely at your behavior. And so you become more aware of, oh, you know, I can either inspire faith in people by how I act, or I can disillusion them in the Dharma by how I act. And this is a serious responsibility, you know. It's not just, oh, I feel like having fun, so I can just do this and that, and then confess it at Posada. Well, no, when other people see you doing this or that, you know, and they know it's not according to the precepts, or like I was saying, how you greet your friends when you meet them at the airport. Yeah, if you go to Taiwan and you know there's bhikshunis picking you up, and you both start jumping up and down, I'm so happy to see you. Oh, this is wonderful, hugging each other. The lay people are gonna go, what's going on here? You know, if you let your hair grow long, you know, the lay people are gonna say, what's happening? Okay, so it, you know, you really begin to feel more responsibility for how you act, how you be safe, how you talk to people, you know. Yeah, and so for me, that was a really big change, you know. It's not about my Dharma practice. It's about preserving the Dharma. Yes, it's still about my Dharma practice, but that's not the thing. I should not be thinking all the time, what do I want to study? Where do I want to go? What retreat do I want to do? Where can I go to do the long retreat that I want to do? Where can I go to study this? Where can I go to do that? Yeah. I mean, yes, those things are important, but we have to have a long-term thing to really preserve the tradition. Because what really became evident to me when I became a bhikshuni is, why did I have the fortune to be able to do this? You know, it's because for 2,500 years there were men and women who took the full ordination, kept the precepts, and then gave that ordination to their students, who then learned the precepts, kept the precepts, you know, and preserved the Dharma and passed it on to their students. So I really began to have the image of, you know, I was never a surfer, but you know how surfers, there's this big wave and you sit on top of it, not in the barrel, but on top. Yeah, in the barrel you get squashed, but on top, yeah. Then I felt like, okay, here's this whole, all these thousands, millions of people who've kept the ordination for centuries, whose names I don't even know, whose names are not recorded anywhere in the history books. But due to these people, their practice and what they did, that made like this big wave of Dharma energy. And little old me, you know, knows nothing, can come along and sit on top of that wave and get carried forward with it. And it's like, how did I get that fortunate? And then it became, I have to help that wave keep going, because there's other people who are going to follow me. And so what I do is important to preserve it so that they have it. Yeah. So that was a big change in my mind. Yeah. So that also, you know, why take the full ordination? One question. another question is, why have monasteries? You know, you can take the precepts, stay at home. Why do you need to live in a monastery with all these people that really, they are too much, you know, who you would never associate with in lay life, you know? Why do you live with them? Yeah, you're very neat and they are slobs. Or you're relaxed and they are fastidiously neat. Yeah. Why should I live with these? And then there's a community, and then the guests come. And when the guests come, you have to take care of the guests. And when the guests aren't here, then we have to take care of each other. And, you know, there's always somebody who's in a bad mood in the monastery. Yeah. You never have one day where everybody's in a good mood. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? At least, you know, one day, can't they all be in a good mood? So that when you see them in the morning, they all are relaxed and smiling. How come you go to breakfast and they're sitting like, yeah, while you are brimming with Dharma energy, you never get depressed and are in a bad mood. It's just those people. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, you have to live with them. And you know what else they do? They start their sentences like this, and by the time they get to the end, they're telling you the most important words silently, because they want you to really listen to what they're saying. Don't they? Yeah. Yeah. And they slur everything. Yeah. Somebody, you know, who speaks Bostonian or Southern or Midwestern, like they have rocks in their mind, in their mouth. In their mouth. Oh, these people, you know? And the people who do your laundry, yeah, they should do your laundry, but they should also fold it properly. And some of them do not fold your laundry properly. They just put it, it's clean, and they go and put it in the thing and give it back to you. So discourteous, you know? I mean, even your mother folded your laundry. Yeah. And these people won't fold your laundry. Of course, do you fold their laundry? No, they didn't do it to me, so why should I do it for them? You can see some buttons are being pushed. Okay, and then there's some people who vacuum and the rug looks just as dirty as it did before. And they had that vacuum cleaner going and they moved it over the same place again and again, but they did not pick up all the dirt and they ignored the rest of the room. And you know what else they do? You know how the sinks have that little strainer to catch stuff in it? They don't empty that. They just let that little thing get more and more full of garbage. Tea leaves. Tea leaves. Yeah, a little bit of cornbread, you know. Oh, and you know what else they do? When they have snap peas or string beans, they don't take the strings out. So you put one of those snap peas in your mouth or one of the string beans and you chew. And it's all turns into some kind of string knotty thing. Yeah? And they expect you to swallow that. Well, I protest. I do not swallow it. I spit it out, and they just have to look at it. Huh? Yeah. Okay. So, you have to live with these people, So these are the big things that really disturb you. Isn't it? These are the things that drive people crazy, big things like, oh, somebody's flirting with somebody else. Oh, we ignore that. I don't want to talk to them about that. They may get mad if I say something. But, about how they handle the dregs in the sing, oh, I'm not going to say any. I got to correct them about that. Yeah, we're actually supposed to advise each other and admonish each other, especially if we see somebody starting to go down the slippery slope, And the way you admonish isn't by first putting your hands on your hips. And you know that position? Yeah, it's the one your parents used, and you stand there and you know that you did. The finger point, yeah. Oh, there was one of the preceptors at the ordination. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. You. Yeah. If you break a precept, I will write about it in the Buddhist journals, because it is my responsibility, together with others, to preserve the Dharma. And if you are breaking something, I will call you out. Okay, so mazel tov. Yeah, he does that. But usually if you're living in a community, people will bring up all the petty things, and these things become crucially important. But the things that are really important, they don't want to say anything to other people about, because the other people may get bad. That's not the way it should be. Yeah. And when we do say something, it should not be in an accusatory way. It should be in a way of, first of all, with a compassionate motivation. And you say things because you care. Sometimes it's true. People will meet you with, yeah, that's their response when you try and help them. What to do? You try. Okay, but you keep the door open. And hopefully, we can see it in our community as time goes on. People are slowly stepping up to the plate and, able to learn how to give advice in a compassionate way without blaming. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mentioned that we tend to say, oh, I took an ordination, it's the precepts. Well, yes, you took precepts, but there's so much more to being ordained than keeping a set of precepts. Like I mentioned earlier, there's the precepts of things that you must do. So, for example, the posada every 2 weeks. Yeah, if you're in the community, we have to set up a boundary, a sima that makes a territory in which we live. If you are within that territory at the time of posada, you must attend unless you're either sick or doing work for the Sangha. You cannot say, I don't feel like it, or I'm mad at so-and-so, I don't want to be in the same room with them. Yeah, if you're within the sima, you must go. Yeah. So this helps us be a community. And because posada is very important, if you just had a quarrel with somebody, you have to work it out before posada so that you will go and do the confession and the reading of the precepts together. Okay. Okay, so there's posada ordination is another one. The fully ordained gives the ordination. Which, by the way, the shikshamana, must be given by bhikshunis. It cannot be given by bhikshus. Actually, the shramaneri should also be given by the bhikshunis for the women. Yeah, all the traditions make it so that the men can give the shramaneri, but it should be the bhikshunis who give that for women, and the bhikshus give it to the shramaneras. Yeah. So you have that. Then you have varsa, or yarne, yeah, which is the summer retreat that the Buddha had the monastics do, because in India, it rains volumes in the summer. And so the monastics were walking across fields, going on Pindapat. They were destroying the rice fields. They were stepping on insects and so on. So, those kinds of things that, you have to stay put, and you cannot leave the territory unless you request permission for the Sangha, at most for a week, sometimes for 2 weeks if it's urgent, to leave for that 3-month period when you're doing the Varsa. At the end of the Varsa, there's another thing that you must do. It's called Pravarana, or Gaye in Tibetan. And this is the ceremony at the end of the rains retreat, because during that 3-month period of the rains retreat, you're not allowed to criticize each other, because harmony is very important. But sometimes people might break precepts, or they might do things that are inappropriate. You try not to bring those up directly as a direct admonishment. You can say things to give the person the information without being direct. Yeah. But at the end, the Pravarana ceremony is everybody requests feedback from the Sangha. And so then everybody can give feedback to each individual. So if there was something that they didn't get along about during the period of the Varsa, they work it out. Usually you do this in a ceremony before the actual Pravarana ceremony, so that everything gets worked out and the ceremony goes very smoothly. Yeah. We do the rains retreat in the winter, as a snows retreat, because the summer is a very busy time here, and we don't have monsoon rains. In the winter, it's cold, you can't go out anyway, it's dark, so we do the retreat, the rains retreat, then in the winter, and the Pravarana at the end of it, also at the end of winter. Okay, then there's another one called the Katina. And this is when, for monastics who have kept the Varsa, then they are allowed to have new robes afterwards. So there's a whole ceremony where the lay people offer cloth, and then this is done differently in different Vinaya traditions. Where then with the Theravadas, the cloth is just given, then they dye it, and the Sangha works together to make one robe overnight. You have to sew the whole robe, and then that is given to the robe keeper for the 3-month period. Here we do it slightly differently, and somebody makes the robe beforehand, and then the lay people offer it to the robe keeper. And when that happens, then there are certain privileges that the people who did the varsa have for a certain number of months. Okay, there's that. What else is there? Yeah. So, those kinds of things. Oh, just Sangha karmas in general. Yeah. If the community has extra things to give it away, then the whole community meets and you do an official transaction to which everybody must agree to give that item away. That can actually take up a lot of time. So what we do instead is we give different people responsibilities for different areas. Like, I think Venerable Pema, you're in charge of the robes. Yeah, Venerable Munsel is not Munsel, Munlam is in charge of the kitchen. There's a few other people who work on the kitchen team. So we have departments like this. So when those people have extra things, when the department has extra things, then rather than have everybody come together and do this procedure to giving it, to somebody else, we just give that person the authority to do that. Yeah. And so, we don't buy the food that we eat. It's all given to us. When we have extra, or sometimes people will give us a whole thing of onions, or they'll give us something with a lot of onions or garlic, which we don't eat, or something like that. Or there's just, we get gazillion boxes of noodles, yeah, or 2 times gazillion boxes of what? Bags of rice, yeah. Then we'll give, those kinds of things to the food bank. And it's really, we should, I think it's quite important that we give the extra things that we don't use and that we don't need, especially in our county. It's a very poor county. It's not a wealthy county. Our neighbors are not wealthy. And to share what we have. And also, the monasteries, it's important to share, not just the Dharma, but when we have extra things and when there's a tragedy in the country, to be there for people. When, like in Taiwan, a few years ago, there was a very severe earthquake. So many of the monasteries really started reaching out and helping the lay people who had lost their homes, or to give them food or help with clothing and things like that. And there was one temple, quite a large one, that did not do this, and they were criticized by the community. Yeah. So, Venerable Sangye Kadro just wrote me an email, because in the Lam Rim on Thursday morning, I guess it was, saying that things that belong to the monastery shouldn't be given to lay people. Yeah. And, in general, that's done so that people, you don't take things that were given to the community and give them to your personal friends. You don't risk giving things away that the community needs. Yeah, and so that's why there's these Sangha karmas in which people agree, or as we do, we have somebody who's in charge of those different departments who has the power to give something away. But yeah, normally it's very negative karma to give Sangha property away to lay people. Yeah, why? Because the people who gave it to the Sangha did so out of faith, and they wanted the Sangha to use it and to use it to sustain their lives. Yeah, so you don't kind of turn around and give that to somebody who is not the object that the donor wanted to have it at the end of the day.
Okay, so during the Vasa retreat, at the end you have that ceremony, what was it called?
Pravarana.
Yeah, pravarana. But during it, they do have prasada.
Yeah, you
as
do
well.
prasada, right.
So I'm just trying to work out what isn't addressed at a prasada.
Yeah.
That you can
yeah,
then...
usually things like that are addressed to prasada, but the time of the Varsa is very special. And so because you're in a retreat situation, people are not going out and so on, you really need to stress harmony. So those things are usually not brought up in that way. Like I said, let's say somebody is skipping sessions and they're just not showing up for things. Normally you might say, this is a rule in our community that everybody comes to this, and you're not following it, and so you wouldn't say it like that. You might say, "Oh, we really missed you at the puja." Yeah, you say something like that. So you get the point across, but you don't criticize them or point it out like that.
They may not confess it at prasada.
Hopefully they would.
Yeah.
But this is in case somebody doesn't confess it. Yeah, I should thank you for bringing that up. If somebody's confessed it, you do not bring it up again. And say, yeah, I'm really glad that you confessed being in a bad mood because you were really mean to me that day. And I'm still holding a grudge to you about, no. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So a question about resources from the land, like when we give firewood because we have too much to lay people, or like strawberries or like wild stuff just growing, like fruits and stuff. Sometimes I was walking with a lay guest from another country that has never tasted those wild strawberries one day, and I gave one to him so that he could taste it, and I was like, that doesn't feel right. This is not mine. This is the Sangha's property. So.
Yeah, it is the Sangha's property. I have a feeling we should maybe at some point do a Sangha karma with this, that those kinds of things, what do you think, Bhikshunis? Is okay? I think. With what? Yeah, the thimbleberries, yeah. Or sometimes somebody wants a pine cone, or they want a rock, or turkey feathers. Yeah, I think people agree that those kinds of things that are just found on the ground, we can give to people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, we give our extra firewood away. There's one lady that we give it to every year, an old lady, and then we often take it.
One time, I think we were picking apples, and a guest just sat down and started eating them. Like, wait, this is like for the community. Yeah. We don't just pick off the tree and eat it right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's understanding things like that.
Venerable, the jungle retreat or the long retreat, personal retreat, is it a part of the monastic requirement or personal?
Which retreat?
Like, for example, a lot of the masters, they go into the jungle or in a cave, meditate.
No.
Or is it not part of the monastic requirement?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah. Yeah. We'll find a special lion and tiger and bear ho-ho for you. Okay, so it's time to close, and then we will continue tomorrow.